Hello and welcome to the Transformation Project, a podcast and community for women who are looking to transform into the best version of themselves no matter where they are at. A place where you can listen, learn, and laugh along with us as we dive deep into different topics to help you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life. Remember, we are all learning here together, and therefore the content and opinions of the hosts and our guests should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Transformation Project. Today, we are going to be tackling a topic that has been on all of our minds, and I'm sure it's been on all of yours too. It has been a very interesting few months, and particularly a very interesting few weeks in Australia, where we are all based. And so we thought that it was probably about time that we addressed the elephant in the room that we're all really scared and tiptoeing around to talk about. And that is really how everybody is feeling with the current situation in the world, how we're feeling with the current situation in Australia in particular. I know a lot of the rest of the world is looking at Australia right now, at what is going on in Australia, with some amount of disbelief, I guess, and for some of us here too. So we thought we might talk about that today, and in a way that we can all be, I guess, respectful of everybody's beliefs and get back to the things that are really important for all of us, and that no matter which side of the debate you sit on, that we can maybe find some common ground perhaps. So yeah. So we're all feeling How are you guys? How are you guys feeling? What has been your thoughts in these past very dramatic couple of weeks for us here?
Yeah, for me, I guess it's one of those, like, I've been sitting here waiting for it to happen in Australia because my family's all in Canada and I've seen them go through a horrible 18 months, just basically continuous lockdown, thousands and thousands of cases every day. And we're sitting here in Australia, or have been sitting here in Australia, not wearing masks, going to the beach every day, like, because COVID really hasn't been a thing here. So it was one of those, like, waiting, like I had a feeling it was going to come here. And now that it has, and we're still very lucky in Queensland, but now that it has, it's kind of one of those, like, I have recently been just sitting in this not dark place, but just sitting in this, like, stuck place, if that makes sense. I've gone down the rabbit hole a couple times, reading, this side and back and forth. And I just don't know. I don't know anymore sometimes what to believe, who to believe, what my feelings are on it. And again, I guess in Queensland, because it's not as pressing here, for a long time for me, I was able to just look away and ignore that it was happening everywhere else and just focus on what I wanted to do every day. And obviously that's changed in the last couple of weeks. And it's been a stuck feeling. And now I kind of, I guess, know what a lot of other people in the world have had to go through and are still going through. So it's been a little bit confronting. And I've seen some things and read some really hurtful things from other people. And I guess that also really, really gets to me too, because it's like, why we have different opinions about, I don't know, veganism, but we can still be friends. But we have different opinions about this, and, like, it feels like we're enemies.
I think that's largely because, and this is just my feelings, because the media and the government are really whipping up a frenzy of fear in people. So no one's scared of veganism, Jess, but I get your point, right? So at the moment, it's such a hot topic and it's so visible and in your face, and it doesn't matter where you go, there is evidence everywhere of this fear and divide. And it's one of the things, same thing, like energetically for me, I've been doing okay. And then on the weekend, I just got smashed energetically by this, I don't know, I guess, realization of the narrative and how it's affecting people so strongly and energetically, where that's shifting us as a humanity, in that people, like you said, who are within families, people who are friends, and just this decision has divided people so much. And that's the same in my family and clients that I talk to as well, that come in to see me as well. There's, parents and children and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins who are divided in their views. And some are really respectful. Some are really like, well, that's okay. I appreciate that. But for me, this is a real concern, or this is a risk, and this is my choice, and that's okay. And that's beautiful. Like, in my ideal world is that's where we should be sitting, is in this space of going, you know what, that's okay. If that is your choice, it's your body, and I completely respect that. But we are so far from that, and that's being driven at the moment by so much stuff that's being shared through media and through government and through social media and through daily conversations and confrontations in the street. Like, there's no way to escape it. So I think that's where, to me, that's the biggest issue. The issue is the divide and the frenzy that is being whipped up. Like, we need to step back and away. And this is, it's almost like you said before as well, it's kind of like, well, I'm okay, so it's all right, and I don't really need to look at it. So that's kind of another whole different conversation as well. And Yvette, I really want to get to that, because I know that you shared something on social media on the weekend that I resonated with so strongly, and it was talking about looking the other way, irrespective of what's going on the other side, right? So it's finding the space where we can be respectful to each other, but also be aware of where everything is moving, and is that a way that's constructive and positive for humanity, or is this something that's not going to go great? And that's the concern, right? So for me, I'm like, I stepped after Sunday sitting on my couch and crying after watching this thing about the narrative, and crying and feeling hopeless for the world, because I felt so out of control. And then really been doing a lot of meditation and stuff. For me, that's been really important for me, maintaining my energetic space and being okay. But doing some meditations, and now I feel okay. But the next step is, how do we actively support some sort of heal of this divide, so that we don't go down that direction of mass devastation?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of fear on both sides of the argument, because on the one side, there's, people who are fearful that if we don't all abide by the current government mandate, that much, much worse is coming. And then we have people on the other side of the fence who are going, if we don't fight this, where will it end? And so both of those people are coming from ultimately a place of fear and desperation. And both of them are yelling, like, why will you not wake up? Like, it's time, you need to wake up. No, you need to wake up. But if that, like, it's just, and I think we can argue ourselves into infinity about the minutiae of, whose science is right, because there's science on both sides. And some science we are allowed to see, and some science we are not. And some doctors we are allowed to hear, and some doctors we are not. And some doctors can say almost whatever they want. And some doctors who may have a differing opinion are not allowed to state that legally. So it becomes really hard for people, as Jess was saying, as to who do you believe? Because even within our own governments, right, depending on even what country you're in, will depend on what is the right thing to do. And even in our own country, 6 months ago, we had, various rules around, who should perhaps get vaccinated, who should not, who has a higher risk, who does not, where do we need to be cautious, where do we not? And all that stuff is changing constantly. So people don't know what to believe anymore. And that's what my social media was about in the end, was, do we all have the right to be equal in the world, no matter who we are? Do we have the right to be equal? Or is it George Orwell animal farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, depending on whatever the factor is, because that factor is different and has been different depending on the country, the time, the government, the narrative through history. Some people are more equal than others, and there's always a reason given for why some people are more equal than others. This is just another reason. It's another time. Might not be color, it might not be religion, but it's something new for us. And so
I feel like it's the hard left and the hard right of this thing that are creating the problems for everyone in the middle. And it's I was talking with a client yesterday, and she works for a recruitment agency for an aged care. And she was saying how obviously this ruling is coming in, I think from September, that it's mandatory for them to be vaccinated, which is creating some issues. So there's just whole roll-on effect from this as well. So creating issues because people are no longer applying for the position, or the same volume of people are no longer applying for these positions, but also people who are in the industry who are making the choice not to do it and then need to leave are creating this gap. And so what then happens if there are not enough people to provide the service? The same as nursing, the same as paramedics, the same as police, the same as defense. Like it's an essential, they're all essential services. And yes, there are some people who believe that it's the right thing for them, and that's great. There are people who don't feel like it's the right thing for them, and they are making the decision to do it to keep their job. Not awesome. And then there's the people who are going, you know what? It's not the right thing for me, and I'm going to leave. And then that can leave a gap. So, I mean, the government have massive decisions to make, and the implications of those decisions extend further than what we can see right now. But I mean, just imagining from my conversation with this client who is in recruitment and aged care, if we don't have people to look after our elderly because they choose not to, or you're getting the wrong people in those roles who don't love looking after people because they've decided to be vaccinated. Like, it's massive. The whole roll-on effect for it is massive. So I think stepping back, and I don't know what the solution is, but for me, the way that I'm dealing with this is really trying to lead with love and just loving people who decide to, people who don't decide to. And also trying not to get caught up in the fear as well, because there is a lot of fear. There's so much fear. And you can, like you said, go down the rabbit hole, Jess. You can go down the rabbit hole and get lost and fear. And, I've had conversations with friends who are devastated. And, there's a lot of other, studies and higher suicide rates. There's a lot of other implications of what's been going on in just our little part of the world in Australia recently because of all of the things that are happening. But we need to find a better way to deal with this.
I would literally protest for somebody to get the vaccine if they wanted to get it and they were not being allowed to get it. I would protest with them if that was the case, because it has to be your personal choice. And so I think for a lot of us, we're not saying don't get it. What I'm saying personally is if it is your choice to do that and you are being denied that option, I would stand with you. But it doesn't work the other way around somehow. And that's a difficult one for me. I keep calling it medical apartheid because I was born in South Africa during that time of apartheid. I was born into the apartheid era. And that was a bit about what I was posting about in my social media the other day, was simply people keep asking me as an ex-South African when they find out that I am South African and I was in that time, like, what did you think about apartheid? And the answer is I didn't really think about it at all because it didn't affect me personally. I was the privileged in that case, just simply because my skin was a different color. And also that's just how it was. I didn't question that growing up in that. Our media was very heavily censored. So whereas the overseas countries would see, riots and police brutality and all these things, we were not shown that. So people overseas knew more about what was happening in our country than we did. It was not in our newspapers. was not on our TVs. And that fear was really built up. And I can still remember there was a newspaper article and they called it Die Swart Gevaar. It means the black fear. So we were brought up to fear this large group of people. And that was, I guess, pushed in every way, right? Very cleverly. And so because we didn't see any of it, because it just was what it was, I didn't ask any questions. I didn't know that, like in my area, why was everybody white? I never asked why. Where did all the black people go at night? I didn't ask. It didn't affect me. I didn't know that they had to have a special pass to be in my area. And I didn't know that after a certain time of night, if they were found out on the streets, they could be arrested because they had times they were allowed to be out for the purposes of work, and then times where they had to be home. They couldn't go out. I didn't know that. I didn't question why only white people were allowed to go into certain restaurants or why there was a special tap. I didn't question. It didn't affect me. I could look away. And so it wasn't until I was about 18 or 19 that Nelson Mandela got released. And so Nelson Mandela, up until that point, was called a terrorist. I guess the same way as many of the black, we would call them freedom fighters now in America. Before we called them freedom fighters, the government were calling them terrorists because they didn't agree with what they were doing. And so suddenly Nelson Mandela came out, and there was a lot of fear about Nelson Mandela coming out, because we were all told that when that happened, every black person in the country was going to rise up and take our houses away and more, right? So there was a lot of that fear still going. Everyone's really, really scared. So Nelson Mandela comes out and he doesn't say any of that. He's talking about peace and working together and not being divided. And I was like, what? And suddenly, all of the stuff that we had not been shown for all of those years, all of the different government tactics to keep black people in a certain space, to keep them uneducated, like actual conscious decisions to keep them uneducated, to keep them in certain areas, to keep their population numbers down. All of these decisions, the police brutality, we started seeing all of this, and we were all like, how did we allow this to happen? The rest of the world had been looking at us the whole time going, how are you guys allowing this to happen? And I think that's the same in all these different circumstances where we look back and go, how did we allow this to happen? And so sitting now in this position, seeing everything that's happening now, you start seeing the similarities, because I can see the fear and the propaganda and the censorship and creating the divide of the people, because a people are divided can't fight back, and then taking away the laws and the rights of people little by little. Apartheid didn't happen overnight. These things take time. I mentioned in a different post a little while ago, the Berlin Wall took like 20 years to build. And some people made a big noise about it, and a lot of people didn't say anything. It was going up all the time, and it wasn't until it was done that everybody realized what had happened and realized that they were cut off. Apartheid didn't happen overnight. A small group of white people didn't come in and look at this enormous mass of black people and make some rule, and it just happened. They just took away their rights really, really slowly and quietly, while nobody was looking and nobody was paying attention, and each one seemed really innocuous on its own. And I can see that happening again now because I've lived that before. I just was living it from a different side of the fence. And so I think that's why we're seeing in this debate, there are a lot of people who have been previously disadvantaged or have reason to distrust authority in some way. So we're seeing a lot of our Aboriginal people speaking really loudly right now. We're seeing a lot of Maori people speaking really loudly right now, because these are people who were told that they had to be in certain areas for their own sake. We're doing it for you. We're going to take away your children for your sake, for their sake. We're doing it for you. right? We've had the Maori people who were like, we're all going to make you go to church. You're not allowed to speak your language. You have to speak English. It's for your sake. And so these sorts of things have happened. I have friends who come from Czech Republic, who were teenagers at the time of the revolution. They have seen communism. They are freaking the heck out right now because they recognize it. And so a lot of these people, when they've seen these previous things happening, they're recognizing this again. And so that's why you're seeing those people getting so loud. Because if it hasn't happened to you, you may not see that for yourself, right? And you're like, it's no big deal. It doesn't affect me. I'm just going to look the other way. I believe I should get vaccinated and all people should just get vaccinated. So I'm going to ignore this thing. It's your problem. It's not my problem. It's your problem. And then, I don't know, what happens in 5 years? You have a change of heart. What happens in 5 years if that person like me, who has a child who quite possibly could have an adverse reaction because she's had previously an adverse reaction. My other child had meningitis at 4 weeks old, right? One of the side effects is meningitis. I have concerns. To get a doctor right now to write me a letter to say your concerns are valid, it's practically impossible because they're nervous. There's a political thing around them. If they say that they'll be looked at in a certain way. They may be getting in trouble for that. So that affects me. If it didn't affect me, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have learnt my lesson from apartheid. Maybe I might have the privilege again of looking the other way, but I don't. And I don't think any of us do. I don't think any of us who look at previous times in history that we find disgusting and abhorrent and go, how did that happen? How could people allow that to happen? Can sit quiet in this time, no matter what side of this divide that we've been put on, these opposing sides of this war. I don't think we can sit quiet no matter what side we are, because we're all people. And we're getting back to this, show me your past. Why are you here? It's after this time. You have not, but I have. So I'm smarter than you. I'm a better person than you. And so we can't all just keep looking the other way. And we can't continue to not be kind to each other and understanding of each other. Because I think ultimately that's what's making this the worst for everybody, is that strong divide in families and friendships, and people who never thought they could be divided, marriages breaking down over this, where we cannot just understand that we should have the right to choose for ourselves, because the person that's affected one way or the other by doing this or not doing this is only ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that, Yvette, because that's right before you did the post that basically kind of said that whole thing. Is probably when I was like down my biggest rabbit hole and was like, shit, maybe I'm on the wrong side. Maybe like, and almost it's easier if I just go with this other side. To be honest, I had that like, this is a lot and it would just be easier. Easier if I kept my mouth shut, easier if I just, like I can't even get the vaccine here in Australia at the moment. Yeah. Like I'm not the right age and I'm not in any work that needs it done. But anyways, I was in that position where I was like, it would just be easier. And then reading that really took me back and was like, I don't know still what's right or what's wrong, but I don't want to be a part of something like all the different stories you've spoken about. Like, and it just, I think more people need to hear that, because it is easy to look away. It is easy just to kind of shuffle. And I don't need
rather.
Yeah.
I'd rather look away.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy being in the position. It's not easy.
You don't know what people's opinions are. Nobody wants to be wrong. Like, I don't, nobody I think is on that other side. I don't think most people are on that other side being like, I'm definitely wrong, but I'm doing this anyways. Yeah. I don't know. It's just hard, but I'm happy you've shared all this, because I think more people need to hear it and see it, because I know a lot of people that I've spoken to, like, and again, this is back in Canada, it's just easier. It's just get it done. Just get the vaccine done. Then we can travel. Then we can go back to normal. And we can just pretend this whole thing is over. And now they're realizing that that's not the case. You're just because you got it done doesn't mean you can do these things. But it was easier. It was the easy decision. And yeah, anyways, life isn't about easy decisions, but sometimes I think we need to be reminded of the past. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I know, like in Canada, they have a really high vaccination rate, right? Like,
yeah.
They're still going into.
Yeah, every province is different, but and they did start to go back to normal, but now it looks like their numbers and stuff are increasing. So I think a lot of the provinces are waiting to hear if they're going back into lockdown, and that's sparking a whole other debate, right? Like who is this because of? Is it because of the vaccinated or the unvaccinated? And the science is all over the place, and it just seems like they've just went through hell for the last 18 months being in lockdown. We did all this work to get so many people vaccinated, and they're going through it again, and it's almost just creating more of a divide.
Merry-go-round
people. Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's why I think that's why I keep saying we can argue the little bitty points. Ultimately, it comes back to being kind to each other, respecting each other's choices over our own bodies, and then trying to overcome that constant divide. Because I think what the countries that have really high vaccination rates have shown us is that just because you have a high vaccination rate does not mean this is over. It's not. So why are we all fighting with each other so much? Why are we all being so absolutely awful to each other? I've heard of within families wishing death on, well, if you don't do that, you should all die. Those are heavy words in families that love each other. It's big.
Have you seen the movie Life is Beautiful?
Long ago.
Oh my God, it's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie. And I guess one of the things that keeps coming into my mind is even with the division in families, right? So when you talk about race and color and the division in that way, it's kind of easy in inverted commas to segregate those two, right? But here it's a choice, and within families. And so consequently, even within families, based on decisions that people are being made, it's dividing families, and remembering that before this choice was ever forced upon us, what was your relationship like with that person? Did you love them anyway? So what really has changed? So in Life is Beautiful, it's the Nazis being, separating, taking the Jews away to a concentration camp. And the main character is a Jewish man and his son, and his wife is not Jewish. So they're put on, the husband and the child are taken away, and she's like, no, I'm a Jew too. But she gets put into a women's concentration camp. She's not a Jew. But because she loved her husband and their child, and she was wanting to be with them, she gave up everything. And I kind of, the biggest fear is this is where this kind of goes, right? This absolute segregation of people. And this will be families divided, children, parents, husbands, wives, based on that choice that's being made. So, who wants to be the one making that choice? I love you, but off you go. And I'm never going to see you again. Okay.
Yeah. And I truly hope we don't get to that. I truly hope that somebody before then goes, I'm going to speak out. You got to hope. You got to hope that at some point people are going to go, this isn't okay.
Here's my question though, right? So people are speaking out. So where does the line come in the sand about what's appropriate speaking out to? Because, you see in Melbourne recently with the lockdown, there was a massive protest, and they got to a high level of aggression, right? For an Australian protest. Is that productive? Is it productive? Maybe yes. Like some people think yes, some people think no. It's kind of counterproductive because then it creates more divide, etc. Like where's the line for this conversation?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't know if it is productive or not, but I do know that it shows that people are getting increasingly desperate. People have lost jobs, businesses, family members, perhaps to suicide, mental illness. They're not able to feed their families. They're being, forced into different things. So people are getting desperate, and they are censored in every other place.
And some people are desperate too, I agree. But then you look in America and the Black Lives Matter, and there were people who were protesting and people who were looting. So yes, there's desperation, but there's also people who feed off that desperation and negativity that go beyond what is okay. So I think from a speaking out and a communication perspective, we need to bring it back into, right, where's the line?
Yeah.
Yes, we need to share this. We need to unite. We need to see how many people are on board and believe in the same thing, but where is the line so that the people who take advantage and actually may or may not believe in that, but they just want to take advantage and push it, see how that's not what we're about.
Yeah. And I think that's where, I have to be honest, so far I have not heard of anything like that happening in this country for the most part. Even on the news, when you do see the protests, if they're left to just do what they do, they will just walk with their sign and they will yell. The only time that we've seen some serious kind of that sort of level of aggression is, I imagine, when they are faced with a line of police in riot gear that shoot at them, and they're unarmed. So that's kind of, it gets difficult. I would say if people start hurting each other in those protests, that's a problem. If people start breaking windows and robbing shops, that's an issue. We haven't seen that yet. And I know, kind of in other areas of the country, the police are there, and they're there respectfully, I guess. They're there to protect both the people who are there protesting as well as the surrounding people. They don't get involved. They don't need to. They just stand quietly and protect the people that they signed up to protect. So that's why I think what happened in Melbourne was so shocking, because it's never been seen before. I've never seen anything like that, except in South Africa, when I was shown stuff like that. And I think that's why the overseas media is so shocked, because they're like, what is happening? Mm-hmm. And I think it's just the level of desperation where people are just, they're over it, and they are desperate to be heard, and nobody is listening. And the numbers are just growing. Every lockdown, I think Melbourne is now going through its 7th lockdown when it was meant to be a week. Is lockdowns the way to go? I don't know. But I know that people are getting more and more desperate, and they're not able to voice that in any other way, and they need to be heard. And the same way as we would have had mass protests in South Africa by people who were not in agreement with what was happening and were being oppressed, the same way as they have the Black Lives Matters movement and those sorts of things happening in the past, because people needed to be heard and they were not able to do so. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that. I don't know if protesting in that way is right or in it's wrong. I think if it can stay peaceful, perhaps. I guess my question is, what's the alternative? The alternative is to do nothing. And for a lot of people, it's just not an option. Doing nothing is not an option. Looking the other way is not an option. Allowing things to continue as they're continuing without some answers to some valid questions is not an option. And so they're left with no other option other than to do that.
You know what I think the answer is? We be kind to ourselves and to others. We connect with people who have similar views, who also want to be kind and connect with others. And through that connection and through the kindness, then we have power as well. So yes, I'm not the battlefield kind of girl, but I do believe in fighting for what I believe in as well. And I agree with you that things need to be said, but I think that the power is in connection. So one of the things that I have been doing is connecting with people on social media who have a similar view to what I view, to how I view this. And through that connection, we build hope, we build love, we build the belief that things will change. And through them, we realize how big a force we really are. And it's not that we're a force because we're going to overthrow the government. It's not like we're not taking anyone out, but we're seeing that we actually are. We do have power, and there is things that we can do that can create positive change. And through doing that, we can actually start to see that, because you're right, there's a lot of stuff that's being shared and then people who are being censored. But even in the sharing, if you go through and see the people who are liking and loving and commenting in a way that you align with, then you can create these amazing, powerful, positive networks and communities who believe in the same thing. And there's a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it gets back to, do unto others as you wish were done to you, no matter which side of the fence you are.
Correct.
It just gets back to that. It really gets back to that. Treat other people as you would hope that they would treat you, no matter what the opinion is. So, yeah, I don't know that we've answered any questions for anybody today. We may have made more questions for some people. And I don't think any of us know what the answer is. I just know that if we just all treated each other with a little bit more love and kindness, the way we'd like ourselves treated, perhaps we would take a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, I can't even say treat others the way that you would treat somebody in your family, because some families are not treating each other really nicely right now on both sides. So just, I think you need to just sit in your heart a little bit and forget about what side you're on. Just sit with it for a minute and see if you're okay with the direction that our world is going and the precedents that are being set, and how you would feel if your child or your grandchild then may have a different opinion to you and were then discriminated against because of it. Would that still be okay? Would you feel that they deserved that then? I think. Heavy times, people. There's a Terry Pratchett book. I love Terry Pratchett for years. Good old Terry Pratchett. Rest in peace. And in one of his books, one of the curses was, may you live in interesting times. And I didn't really get it, but I do now.
That's
Sure is interesting times. So I guess, for all of us, I think we are all within our little transformation project. Hosts can say that we hope interesting times lift soon. We hope that whoever you are, you're okay, whichever way things are for you right now, whichever side of this horrible divide you sit. We hope you're okay. We hope we've perhaps given you something to think about, and if not, we hope that you can just be a little kinder in your thoughts on both sides. Feel free to head over to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. Remember to be kind, because I don't know what we're going to get after this one. Good God. And hopefully we will see you next time. Bye.